Welcome everybody to Coffee and a Mic, and we'd like to thank SRP for making this possible. So let's give a round of applause to SRP. Today we are joined by Representative Andy Biggs. Representative Biggs, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, Chris. Good to be with you again. Yeah, thank you.
And how long have you been in from Washington? Are you guys on a break right now?
We came in, I think, last Friday, I think it was, and I'll go back Sunday.
Okay. Not much free time these days, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but some of the things happening in Washington right now, is there anything you want to lead off with before we get into the tax bill?
Well, we could talk about anything that's happening internationally. There's one or two things happening internationally.
There's a couple of things.
Yeah,
the whole thing with Canada.
Yeah, this Canada, and yeah, and the G7 thing. I mean, we all forget about the G7
well, yes,
because
the G7 in Canada. That's true.
But then domestically, there's just a couple of riots here or there going on. I mean, there's nothing happening in the country. This is the summer of peace and quiet.
Peace and 69 all over again.
Yeah.
Okay, well let's talk about the big beautiful bill.
Yeah.
This is actually a monster bill. This encompasses so many different factors, from everybody's individual taxes to public investment. So let's let you start, and then I'll fill in with questions.
Yeah, if I could, I just want to explain why you have a reconciliation bill. The reconciliation bill was given by statute to Congress 50, 60 years ago. It allows you to get around the filibuster, which is the 60-vote rule, right? And so you get one time per budget to actually reconcile spending and reductions and programs to that budget. And so that's why you have one bill, and it's a monster of a bill, and it goes completely around the normal budgeting process. And Chris, what happens? I remember learning about this when I first got to Congress. I never heard of such a thing. They do essentially a faux or fake budget as a baseline, and then you are matching everything else toward that baseline in a reconciliation package. And this is probably the biggest reconciliation package probably in history, quite frankly. And so that's why there's so much there.
And the way we would have done it in the past, and for a lot of people here, maybe not in their lifetime, but would have been a series of bills.
That's exactly.
And with an actual budget. Mm-hmm. And now we sort of just cheat it?
Yeah, so what you've got is the faux budget, the reconciliation package, and then we're doing, at the same time, the real budget over here for 2026. And it's my understanding, at least I got a memo or a notice, that we're going to actually do the first of those 12 bills that we're supposed to have done by the end of July. Actually, by the end of June, now that I think about it, it's this June. We're going to do the first one of those this next week. And that's what I'm told. We'll see if that happens. But nonetheless, you're supposed to do that. The fiscal year budget over here, the reconciliation package, is you do everything you can to get everything in there that ostensibly meets the law and the rule, so you can avoid going to the filibuster. That's the sad truth.
Well, there we go. So we got to get it done in a hurry, and avoid that. And so you have this one monster bill, and this one in particular is even bigger than most. And so why don't we start with the personal side? That's good news, right?
Yeah. So if you look at the taxation side, you're going to see an extension of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, and coming out of the Senate, it looks like they've made everything permanent in this extension, and that's good, because it would have, if we didn't if we fail to pass this bill, you're going to get a $4 trillion tax increase with a substantial portion of that going to individuals and families. And so that's one of the reasons that some of us have swallowed some of the stuff we don't want to swallow. And so that's a good thing. And it's going to protect individuals and like I said, businesses. And the pass-through is, I think the pass-through has been corrected in this bill as well, so that it depends on what the Senate did, if they kept it in. We fixed it in the House so that the small businesses, small corporations get the pass-through to individuals, and that's a big thing too.
So essentially taking the 2017 cuts that were enacted during the president's first term, set to sunset in 2025,
Yeah.
And making them permanent, so our taxes don't go up for 26, and then if you own a small business, then perhaps getting some breaks on your pass-through income so you're not double taxed.
That's right.
And then a little bit on exemption as well for personal property on some of those businesses as well.
Right. Yeah. There's that as well. And then, I mean, I should probably just shoot everything out there, and you can tell me what you want about that. So yeah, there's that as well. Then there is the Senate bill reinstituted the immediate expensing, which was a really big deal for businesses going forward, and it's keeping the corporate rate where it was, and President Trump, I wanted it in 2017, I wanted it down to 15% because I felt it would be incredibly stimulative to the economy, and we got it down. I think we're at 21, I think, right now, and that's where we're going to stay. President Trump wants it down to 15 again, but there is no way to kind of offset that for reconciliation purposes. So, I mean, the tax package is enormous, and it will have an impact probably north of $4 trillion, maybe as high as $6 trillion to the economy is the estimate. So,
through stimulating,
yes,
by putting the money back into people's hands.
Right. The issue is some of the people who are scoring it in a static model, and so they're saying it's actually going to have a net cost. And some are pursuing it from a dynamic model, and they say it actually will have a net positive and increased revenue. I personally believe anytime you allow taxes to go back to the individual or even businesses, history has told us that you actually increase the revenue side of it, of taxes, because there's more economic activity, there's more spend, there's a faster velocity of the money, and so it comes into by way of taxation revenue. We know that's the case because we're sitting just about the highest tax revenue we have ever had. And I don't want to do the downer part and just talk about the spending issue, because that's really the issue. But this is going to continue that, in my opinion, expansion of the economy, and it'll continue the velocity of the use of the money.
Putting it back in people's hands, people know what to do with it. They know how to grow their business. They know where to invest and save. And,
right.
And then there's a lot in there for seniors, increased personal deductions, some decrease on Social Security taxation.
That's right. And so President Trump talked about no tax on tips. The House had a more expansive version of it. I think the Senate's pared it back because they wanted to get some of the other aspects of President Trump's tax plan. But what they've done is they're putting a time limit and also an income level before you can get no tax on tips, provided you make less than, I can't remember what the number is because we haven't seen the bill yet, right? But I want to say it was $15,000 to $20,000 and over time, and Social Security also. But I think the income level is higher. I want to say $75,000. If you make less than that, then there'll be no tax on Social Security. We'll have to wait and see, because even though Senate has announced its bill, we don't know how well it's this is what you and I were talking about before. We don't know how well it matches up with the bill as will be transmitted to the Senate from the House.
So everything in progress as we speak.
Still a little bit of scrambled eggs, Chris. That's all I'm saying. We're still trying to figure it out. Yeah.
And nobody wants to watch this part.
Yeah. This is the sausage making you've heard about.
Someone's hungry.
Yeah. Breakfast time.
All right. So we have some really good news in there for personal if it all comes out that direction. Some key spending areas that are important. Modernizing the FAA air traffic control, way overdue. Scary, actually, on some of the technology that's still being used.
Yeah.
And I think there's a fascination on social media right now with every time there's a plane crash of any time, which hasn't really increased, but because we have social media now, it's a big deal. And I always think, what if they did that with car crashes across the U.S.? Right? Everybody would be fascinated by that. So.
This is a new job for you, Chris.
Right?
You could create an app for that.
FAA and the flights, there's some additional spending for energy production. Tell us about some of the things that you're watching that are in there that you do like.
So we are watching. I am watching the FAA. They're going to have money. They're going to. I don't know if it's everything that Secretary Duffy wants, but I think it's a significant down payment, which is, as you say, long overdue. And as somebody who flies a lot, I used to never sweat until recently because more information coming out. But the reality is that's overdue. We're watching that. We're watching the spending reductions. Where are those coming from? How are they doing that? Because one of the rules is for everything you're spending over here on the spending side, and the taxes are tax reductions are considered spending because they ostensibly in a static model they need to be offset. So how are you offsetting on that? So I'm watching the Green New Deal and what the Senate's doing with the Green New Deal. So the Senate kind of pared back what the House did on the Green New Deal. Everybody ran on this notion of we're going to eliminate the Green New Deal, but the House only repealed about 65-70%, and the Senate's less than that. So I'm anxious to see what the Senate actually did there. So that's one thing I think is really critical to us as an economy, what's going on with the Green New Deal. And then just generically, we're talking big programs. I'm looking at the border and how much money they're putting there and where it's going into the border security. I'm watching also closely the Department of Defense money. And just so you know, the Department of Defense has never passed an audit. And when I say that, I mean ever. And they are going to be bumped up in this bill. The response of Congress typically is when we get a bad audit or report from DOD is we give them more money, and which seems odd to me. But I'm looking at that because this extra bump that they're getting, it needs, if you're going to give them extra money, it needs to be confined to the new modern warrior needs, which is hypersonic missiles and drone, weaponized drone activity, drone detection, drone fighting, and hypersonic detection. I'm not sure that it does that. I think it's a little bit broader than that, and that makes me concerned, because just those two things alone are an additional $300 billion spend, and so.
Wow. As opposed to, say, a new fighter aircraft or tanks, which are proving obsolete in Ukraine and Russia.
Right. Yeah, that is correct. And so that's what we look at, and reports are that we have warehouses filled with obsolete material that comes from just the way Congress is structured, where This guy's got a manufacturer in his district, so he makes sure that there's always a little bit of money to keep that facility going, even though the Department of Defense says, well, we don't need that, we don't use that, it won't be used, and so it goes into a warehouse. These are the kind of things that are, I probably shouldn't be saying publicly, but the public does need to know about this, and those are the concerns I have, Chris. And it's tied. It's not directly in the reconciliation package, but the fact that they're getting more money, and I'm not certain exactly where that money's going, that is in the reconciliation package.
And certainly a concern, and we sort of made light of the international scene and the gravity of just how big that is. So these things are going to be important concerns going forward. Is there a method or some other way of reining it in? It looked like that's where the administration was headed at the beginning, but seems to have stalled.
I do think there's a lot to be said about it, but I do think that this administration is actually, and I think the Iranians have actually reached out. There will be a meeting with the EU and a number of other, like the UK and Germany and some leaders of the EU with Iran in Geneva today, Geneva, Switzerland today, to talk about Iran. Iran wants to, I won't say they want to capitulate, but they do want to basically de-escalate what's happening, ostensibly. We don't know that for sure. In the meantime, President Trump has given them an additional period of time to come to the table as well. The issue ultimately is in the International Atomic Energy Commission issued another statement today saying that Iran definitely had enough enriched uranium for multiple nuclear bombs. This is a real issue for as we deal with a state that has professed that it wants to eliminate Israel off the face of the planet and the U.S. At the same time, this continues to escalate, actually, and so you're getting a regime that indicates that they maybe want to de-escalate, but they continue to escalate as well. So it's really complex. It's it's a volatile situation because the dominoes that impact because of Iran and Israel's really, Israel does control the skies. They control. They've wiped out most of the missile delivery systems of Iran, but they've also taken on a lot of the oil fields that Iran uses, and what that does is just you've seen it in the oil future prices, which last I saw yesterday was at 75, I think. Which and Russia needs $60. I over-answer, Chris. I'm sorry,
no,
but Russia needs $60 barrel oil to continue their aggression against Ukraine. And it was nearing 60. It was just a little above 60 before this happened. And now you see that it's grown by about 27% increase, which gives Russia more revenue to pursue longer, which is an unfortunate thing. So that's why I'm saying there's dominoes. In the meantime, China was a big purchaser of Iranian oil. So does now China move to Russian oil? We're not sure. I mean, so there's a lot of dominoes. So it isn't, I mean, we look at it and we say, well, Israel and Iran, we just need them to resolve whatever's going to happen there. In the meantime, you got Netanyahu saying that he wants a regime change in Iran. The Iranian street seems to want regime change and has wanted regime change. If you watch for the last 20 years, this is a volatile situation with a lot of dominoes. It's very complex, and it all may play out, quite frankly, in the next 2 weeks or so.
Well, and I'm glad you did share all of that because never as simple as the media or particularly Facebook makes it look, right? So getting all of your news from those places can be problematic, but far more complicated. We do have an emphasis, though, in the military now on readiness, which seems to be a move in the right direction. Is there a way to get the DoD to pass an audit, or not in our lifetime?
maybe not in our lifetime, but but there is a way to get them to pass the audit. I mean, look, they've actually come in and testified before committees I sit on and say, well, we're just too big to ever pass an audit. We're too big to be audited. Now that should scare the bejeebies out of all of us. I mean, and as it does me. But yeah, the way you would do it is you have to have transparency, and you need to have also audit authority and make sure that your inspectors general can get into the contractors as well, because you have to see what's going on there. Because a study, and this is 10 years ago now, a previous study estimated $125 billion a year of waste in DOD, and oddly enough, coincidentally, a week or so ago, when I was on a committee and we were evaluating, we had the inspectors general and the auditor general coming in telling us how much waste there is in the Pentagon, and the same day we were voting on giving DOD more money. And I mean, this is what I'm telling you. It is one of the most ironic things that ever. And some people say it's not ironic; it's moronic. But the issue is you've got to get control of it, and you have to fire people if there's waste, fraud, and abuse going on. And the estimates are just untold. It's so big. It is so big. But that's, until you hold people accountable, you're going to have a major problem, and you'll never pass an audit.
Well, let's bring it back just a little bit. One of the things that we've talked about a lot over the last few years is border security. I know it's near and dear to your heart, and we've talked a lot about some of the failures that have occurred and some of the things that the Border Patrol are telling you over the years. Over this past year, we're hearing that there's noticeable changes. Tell us about what's going on there and about what's in the bill.
Yeah, so since President Trump came back in, you've actually seen it dry up. In some days, there's been as few as 39. A couple weeks back, maybe a little bit longer than that, there were only 39 encounters on the entire southwest border. And I can tell you, you and I have talked about this. I could go down there and there'd be 300 walking across in 10 minutes, And so that's really a remarkable change. The other thing is, last month, there was no releases of any illegal alien into the country. None at all, not one. They were all turned away. And that's remarkable. And in and of itself, it's probably the most secure we've seen in my lifetime. We still have a problem with human, drug, and sex trafficking through various parts of our own border that we have to get control of. But we're going to be able to get more of that under control, because just last December and November, our line agents mostly were doing, they were off the line, they were doing processing, they were doing caretaking for the literally thousands and thousands of illegal aliens that were coming in. Now they're on the line, so I can go down there now. I can't remember when I was there last, but you can go and I can actually see the one agent a mile or two this way. I can look this way to see another agent. Whereas before, I could go down there and we literally would drive the line and not see an agent for miles, so literally 20, 30 miles, and not see an agent, because they were all off processing. And so that's the distinction that you have, and so it allows for enforcement. What the next phase, and so the money that's going is obviously to process. So you have to, I know people are using the term due process, but they are giving process, and it's through the Immigration Naturalization Act, which requires that it go to an administrative law judge, and that's where they're going. If you're here illegally, and whether you're claiming amnesty or not amnesty, but asylum or whatever it may be. The reality is we only have 52,000 beds, and they're full. They're full, and so this will allow us to detain a few more, and until they're processed, and then you're going to have the way to remove them from the country, because historically about 92 to 95% of all asylum claims have been deemed to be fraudulent or false and have not been sustained by the courts. And so as they're working their way through that, they're trying to accelerate that and as soon as they get their hearing, move them out. But I mean, you have to remember that over the 4 years of the previous administration, you actually had people getting court dates 7, 8, 9 years out. And so they're trying to accelerate all of that, and that takes money and resources, and so that's what's going on. But the border has come under control, and it didn't need a new law, it just needed some enforcement.
And so that was literally the key difference. So nothing's been built, nothing's been added. It was just as simple as not releasing them into the country.
That's right, the incentives are gone. So I mean, I could talk about some of those incentives. Like one of them was the CBP One app, if you remember this famous app. It allowed somebody who was illegally out of the country, well, legally out of the country, but they were going to come and enter illegally. They could set up an appointment, literally an appointment, and if you did it by CBP One app, they would give you automatic parole into the country, which means that you would be let into the country. You could get everything for some kind of legalized work status for 2 years. And we didn't vet you, we didn't watch who you were. And the other one was the Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, Venezuela program, which if you were involved in that from one of those countries, you could come up and we would just let you into the country. So there were some incentives there. There was the sanctuary city policies and state policies, the illegal aliens getting in-state tuition policies. All those policies were drivers for people to come up. I mean, and I would talk to them, why are you coming? I'm going to here and there. So it was simply actually enforcing the law and saying, you know, we're not doing that anymore. We're going to actually enforce the immigration naturalization law on the border.
In talking to one of the directors for Homeland and then also Border Patrol, they noted, and I think you've talked about it in the past, we're not talking necessarily about Mexican nationals or Central Americans. Where were those people coming from, and then have we found any of them?
Yeah, so they were coming from virtually every country, and I met people from Ukraine, Russia. I met people from Ukraine and Russia during the Ukraine-Russian war who came over in the same group that the cartel had put together to come across. You know, I mean, that was odd. But you could meet them from every African nation, I think, Mali, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Guinea, you know, all countries. And yes, we have found some of them, and the focus primarily of ICE has been those who we know, who we known or discovered to be gang members, criminals, and there was over 1 million of those in those categories, and that's where they're focusing now. We have found a lot of them, and trying to process them as well as quickly as we can. But I mean, President Trump's frustrated and said he's frustrated, but the numbers, about 180,000 people have been deported. And when you consider that you had minimum 12 million people that came in the last 4 years, that really isn't that many contextually, and it is actually far fewer than President Obama was able to deport. And part of it is the sanctuary city movement, where a lot of these folks have moved to some of these sanctuary states where there's, I want to say this delicately, non-congeniality between the law enforcement of those states or localities and ICE. In other words, ICE will say, we believe you've got this person here in custody. We have an ICE detainer, either a warrant, or we actually have a court order where they're to be removed from the country, and the sanctuary jurisdiction won't turn them over, or will release them before ICE can get there, and when they should have a 48-hour hold. And so I think that's part of the frustration that ICE is feeling, and you see the riots that are going on, the anti-ICE riots around the country right now.
Well, we're starting to run a little short on time.
Because I over-answer, I'm sorry about that.
It's very informative. But one thing that we haven't talked about then is where are you headed with the bill?
Okay, yeah, so back to the bill. I'm told that the Senate is going to pass the bill out this week. There's going to be debate, particularly over the SALT provisions, because we have some people said they're not going to vote for that bill.
SALT provisions are the exemptions for
State and local tax for high tax jurisdictions. So it doesn't, I've had some Arizona people say, I'd love exemptions from my property taxes. Doesn't apply to you in Arizona. It's going to apply to California, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, Maryland.
because of the way the threshold is set and their taxes are so incredibly high.
That's exactly right. And so those people from California, they'll vote for the bill anyway, the Californians, probably the Illinoisians, the New Yorkers, half of them will vote for the bill anyway, but there's a group of them that don't want to vote for the bill, and that's enough to kill the bill. So there's going to be some more tugging and pulling on this bill when it gets back from the Senate. I'm just hoping that there's not so much there that you end up going to a conference committee, because if you go to the conference committee, what that means is you've got some people from the conference in the Senate, some people from the House, they get together and they do what they want to do, and it comes out and nobody's happy. And so I don't want that to happen. But if there's few changes in the Senate, other than that SALT provision, I would imagine that if it gets out of the Senate this week, or this coming week, it would get to the House, and they probably would keep us there in the House before July 4th to vote on it all the way up sometime before July 4th.
And that's actually my next question. Is there like a hard line it's gotta be done by?
There's no deadline, but there is, in my mind, we're already over the deadline where we should have been, because for the new tax provisions to really have any kind of significant impact, you want those done sooner rather than later. And because you want the certainty, because when I talk to CEOs for businesses and stuff, what they tell me is they tell me things like, look, here's the deal, we're holding capital, we've got capital here, we're not expanding, we're waiting to see what you guys do with the taxes. So, I mean, even though President Trump's brought in $10 or $11 trillion in new capital money, there's others on the sidelines still. So you wanted to get that done sooner or later. So that's a long way of saying there is no fast rule, except for I think we really need to have it done before the next fiscal year, because once you move into the next fiscal year, you lose the faux budget from the last fiscal year, and so you got to basically do that again.
And the federal system runs on what kind of fiscal year?
September 30th is the end of our fiscal year.
So still plenty of time to
And I do
mess around with that.
Look, we want to put this thing to bed, right? I mean, don't we? I mean,
yeah, the certainty is really key
Right.
from a business standpoint. So, yeah, we definitely want to get it done sooner rather than later. But well, we've left out energy production and security, water security, and a few other odds and ends with
I'll have to come back.
reshoring manufacturing, right?
Oh, yeah.
One of our favorite topics. But we do appreciate you being here and the time that you give us. So we can take a couple of questions, though. Yes?
Any attempt to put some, I guess, legislation to help control a little bit of the district judge?
Oh yeah, district judges. So there's probably 4 ways you could deal with it, and one of them, I introduced a bill regarding jurisdiction for nationwide injunctions, and mine kind of morphed into with Darrell Issa, so we ended up passing this bill, so kind of prohibiting nationwide injunctions, which, by the way, used to be a bipartisan position. And it's passed out of the House, it's in the Senate now waiting for Senate action. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, even current members of the U.S. Supreme Court that are on the more leftist side of the court have said that nationwide injunctions are no bueno. So we think that that's one way you could do it. Second thing you could do is Article 3, Section 1 of the Constitution allows us to get in and actually change jurisdiction generically or eliminate courts. You could actually eliminate courts and positions. And so that's been talked about. There's a bill now that I've signed on to which actually says if you're illegally in the country, you don't have standing to bring a lawsuit on an immigration issue. And so that is pending. We'll see what happens there. Another thing you could do is some people have filed impeachment against some of the judges that are most perniciously active. And then I've introduced legislation also under Article 3, Section 1 on the good behavior clause to remove judges for failure to, because you're only allowed to be serving during a, quote, term of good behavior, or excuse me, during good behavior, close quote. But the difference between the impeachment is that only takes a simple majority out of the Senate and the House as opposed to supermajorities. So and then the last way, of course, is you can always defund certain courts, but if you do, you cannot cut salary. So constitutionally, you cannot touch salary of a judge, but you can say, yeah, you can stay there, but you'll have no cases assigned to you, you'll have no staff assigned to you, you'll be sitting there a very lonely person with your ability to go to Facebook and see what's happening. I mean, you could, provided it's your own funded computer. So you could, all those things are available for people, for the Congress to do if they would do them. So.
Others?
I've got a question. Are the feds going to start updating our infrastructure when it comes to dams and nuclear power plants and the electricity?
So the feds are not going to touch the nuclear power plants and electricity necessarily, other than to try to, quite frankly, mandate or regulate hardening to make sure that they're safe.
What about building new?
So building new is a different animal, and what the EPA administrator, and I haven't been able to talk to the Energy Secretary about this, they want to streamline the approval process so that, in particular, we're talking about these small reactors, the compact reactor units that are being developed, that are actually being built in some places. We just need the authority from the federal government to allow us to use them. For instance, in Arizona, you would alleviate a significant amount of your power needs if you brought in just one or two of those. And it's clean, renewable. The technology on uranium rods and usefulness now is you have it's just a little less than 100% complete usage of that rod before you ever have to even replace the rod. So that decreases concerns of waste and how you manage that significantly, and also makes it much more efficient. So this is the wave of the future. This is where we're going to go, and it's a renewable energy source, so we're working, trying to get the feds to streamline that, because I think states and energy companies are going to want to get a hold of that. I hope they would. I would rather have one of those than a massive solar farm or a wind farm, frankly.
And it's something that we definitely need, and that was part of our discussion I was hoping to have. But if we started today, under today's rules, it's a minimum 10, 15 years before we have any production from that unit.
Right. Which is, I mean, you see it because Georgia, I think, and it took them, 12, 15 years and billions of dollars before they could ever get going. This is a much lower cost way. The key would be being able to hook up to the grid, right? I mean, actually get to the wires. And that's why we're pushing. We want them to approve this sooner rather than later. Good grief, we know a lot now about how to build a safe nuclear power plant. And this notion that you're going to have to go through a billion years of bureaucratic red tape is not feasible, and will kill this. But I mean, there's a company out of Texas that's actually building these prototypes right now.
And a lot of them being put into place in Europe.
Right, that's right.
And so we know they work. It's just a matter of getting them up and running.
That's right.
Very good. Well, again, Representative Biggs, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
We're grateful for you being here and also for SRP making this all possible.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chris.